Steve Harvey's large blended family appears to be devolving into a massive catastrophe. Steve had always thought that he could blend all of his family together along with all his 7 children from 2 wives and live happily with his third wife and adopted daughter, but that doesn't seem to be working out that well, for the Guy You See fans always had a hunch that Marjorie, Steve's third and current wife, was never with him because she actually loved him. The only reason she decided to marry the comedian was for his money and fame. And after everything that Steve's biological children have just said about her, this all might actually be true after all. And the worst part about all of this is the fact that Steve treated his own biological children terribly just to appease his new wife and adopted daughter, Lori Harvey. The children allegedly never really liked Marjorie as a person, and the only reason they decided to tolerate her was because of their father. But after reports of her cheating on Steve started coming out, the children broke their silence and exposed her for the kind of person she is today on Celebrity Hyped. We are going to talk all about how Steve Harvey's biological children exposed his wife Marjorie for using Steve for his money and fame. But wait, you gotta promise to give this video a big thumbs up and smash that subscribe button before we get to spilling any tea today. Now we all know how fans have been talking about the Harvey family for a while now. And they have good reasons to do that too. Steve was the one who brought all the attention to the family because of his popularity. But this time it's his wife who's doing all the work. Recently, reports from sources came out saying that Marjorie had been cheating on Steve in his own house with not one but 2 different men. And if that wasn't bad enough on its own, there's more bad news for the Harvey family, according to sources. This is something that many fans suspected from the beginning of their marriage. Everyone had doubts about their union, but very few fans spoke up because we all assumed that if Steve was happy, he knew what he was doing. After 2 failed marriages, we all thought that the guy would have finally cracked the code for this. But as it turns out, he hasn't. And who is your favorite person? In addition, Marjorie Harvey is allegedly asking for half of everything that Steve owns in the divorce settlement. Considering that he is a literal billionaire, half of everything he owns is more than most of us could ever even dream of making in a lifetime. The wealthy should have known better, but in light of everything going on in the Harvey clan, their children are unable to remain silent any longer. A guru in the Black community also contributed to all of this. The biological children of Dean have finally spoken out about why they never got along with Marjorie in the first place. They shared the same reservations as all the fans, but they only chose to accept her into the family because they trusted their father's judgment. However, everything she did to them after she married Steve made them detest her even more. Not only did she prove to be a bad wife and stepmother, but we also saw how she distanced Steve's own children from him, which really opened our eyes to the kind of person she is. Apparently, Steve wasn't the best father to any of his children, and I didn't really get to know him well until I was 16. His long-standing justification was that he had to concentrate on his career. Marjorie even motivated him to be cruel to his own children. Apparent his first son, Winton, was beaten up by his father on several occasions, which left him bruised, and Marjorie motivated him on this. Because he's a role model, right? But this is the thing, you fuss at the kids when I go in, and it's like their rooms are a mess. And I'm like, see, this is ridiculous, this stuff everywhere. And he goes, and he fusses at the case. He's like, if you don't get this stuff up out of here, and you better not let me catch this room looking like this again. And I'm like, Steve, so when his mother filed for custody, Steve destroyed her with his fancy lawyers and kept Winton. But that didn't change anything for poor Winton. He still didn't have a father figure in his life until he was older. But now that all the children are older, there's no keeping them back from exposing Steve and Marjorie for everything that they've done. But before we tell you all the tea on that, make sure to share this video with a friend who might enjoy our content And give this video a big thumbs up while you're at it too. That's what's wrong with this generation. Today, these young boys today, what does she bring to the table? What else she need to slide up to the table? With what about your job? What happened to men who was supposed to be responsible? Now we look at Marjorie's dating. History, it becomes clear that her mission was to be rich all along. She was married 2 times before she met Steve. And both of these times she was married to famous drug dealers who showered her with money and gifts. But as soon as they got busted, she ran for the hills and filed for divorce. And then she met Steve. You guys know how Steve and Marjorie like to tell people the story of how they met. They always make it seem so romantic. And straight out of a novel, in reality, what happened was actually pretty shady. The two met for the first time at one of Steve Harvey's stand-up comedy shows back in the 80s. As soon as Marjorie entered the comedy club, Steve started staring at her up and down and literally stopped the show. It was obvious that he had gotten a crush on her instantly. He finally realized, okay, I gotta say something. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who this is, but I'm gonna marry her. Conversely, Marjorie is an intelligent woman. Even though Steve admitted to the audience that he didn't know the woman, he knew he was going to marry her that evening. He ended up asking her out, and she rejected him outright, stating that she would never settle down with a man who couldn't give her the posh, luxurious lifestyle she desired. Well, we should respect her decision to reject him. Everything she did after that was reprehensible. A few years later, when Steve pretended to be a famous comedian, he asked her out again. And this time, she said yes without hesitation. As soon as they were hitched, she carried out her plan. We can't say Steve is a saint either. He is a grown man and should have known how to treat his own children. But it seems like the only child he seems to be focusing on isn't even his blood. As you all know, Steve focuses the most on his children. At first, she persuaded Steve to legally adopt her children and give them his name. The benefit of this is that her children would get a bigger part in Steve's inheritance if they're legally his children. However, she didn't stop there. Gradually began to distance her children from him. Do you think this of my story is that I was fired from my father? Because as I was fired, I was able to start Beyond Her and active wellness brand for women of color, and then be able to write this book. Happiness. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more videos like this one in the future. With that said, as always, we will see you in our next video. This is my youngest daughter, Lori. Steve's biological children are finally realizing that and are exposing Marjorie for her greedy games and manipulation of their father. It's sad that Steve still doesn't pay any attention to his own children.